Hey everybody, this is Les and Christy, and this is the Easy Farms Podcast, where we are doing things from the ground up. We're here to help guide your homesteading adventure and hopefully make the journey a little easier. Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Easy Farms Podcast. Christy, we got a question to start off with today.
Yes, we do. We have one from Tristan. He asked, how do you deal with being so far away from things, store, hospital, friends, etc.? Well, Tristan, not everybody living in a homestead is necessarily far from everything. It depends on where you choose to live. We have chosen to live
in the middle of nowhere by design.
No, it's really not. It feels like in the middle of nowhere, but we are about 45 minutes to an hour from the major city that we grew up in. And we just try to organize our times. I mean, we just have to go in, and as far as going into the city, going into doing the things we want to do, but, you know, grocery store, visiting people, things like that. We just really, I don't forget stuff and just have to go back on a regular basis. You have to really think things through, grocery list through, everything you need. If you need to go to Lowe's, if you need to go to Costco or Sam's, if you need to visit family members, if you need to do anything, we try to just get it all in one day. However, in our case, we're not too far from a Walmart. That's probably about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, but that's in a direction we never go. For us, we go more towards the city we grew up in. Therefore, it's a good 45 minutes to an hour drive, depending on where we go within that.
We still got a lot of family that lives in town and friends.
And that's where our congregation is.
Yeah, I started my business when we lived in town, so I'm back in there every day. I'm going in for work. So if Christy does forget something, she calls me and I run by the store and pick it up. And that makes things a lot easier.
But for people who do live far away, I will say the biggest concern that I have at the distance that that we are in is hospitals. So that is our greatest concern, is the hospital. And a lot of times when people live out in the country, a lot of the fire department and ambulance can be volunteer and maybe not be manned at all times. So your closest one may be a little more further than you want for comfort. And that's just what goes along with living out far. Some people have a good fire department that is manned at all times. And then some people have a volunteer fire department, and it may not be manned all the time.
Ours is a volunteer fire department, and the good thing is we're only about 3 miles away from there. And they do have somebody in the building all the time, I do believe, and everybody else has their radios on when they're out doing their work here in the county.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Because I thought at one point, we've lived here for a long time, I thought at one point that wasn't manned at all times. Sure it is. That's good. Well, that's something I wished I knew a long time ago. So that would help me. However, fire too, but the need for a hospital is probably going to be my biggest concern, not grocery stores or anybody, because we're not really, I mean, we may live in a country, but there's still people living all around us.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I go for a walk down the road, country road, and people go by and we wave, and you know, some of my neighbors, and they're all within walking distance. It's not like a subdivision where I step out of my place and just wave to the people. But some of them live a little closer together, and they can see their neighbor much easier. We just live on a little bit bigger piece of land. But that's about the best answer I can give you for us. I don't know about other people. I have heard of other people living more really off grid, really far out, really wanting to be away from a lot of people, things like that. That is not my style, though I would love to learn in case of emergencies how to survive off grid. However, and those are some things that we try to piddle around with, but we don't live off grid. I do like the comfort of my AC units and everything going and all that. I don't really know what completely off grid goes with some people, but I think that's pretty cool that they can do that. We just don't do that. And what I was going to say along with that, but those people live really far out. But the average person probably doesn't live, 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes from the nearest hospital, grocery store, things
Yeah.
like that.
The way I used to tell the kids when their friends would come out before they went, tearing off through the fields and woods was I reminded them all, nobody gets a helicopter ride out of here. If you get hurt, it's a slow ride to the hospital. So
That's true.
You're extra careful. You're careful when you're doing chores. I always keep my phone in my pocket.
Mm-hmm.
The whole time I'm here. If Christy's not home, I'm here by myself. I kind of limit the use of power tools, that sort of thing. And it's no fun cutting a finger off and then having to drive yourself to the hospital. And when you go out in the woods, we usually go armed.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it's if you come upon something, well, the way I put it, if you never want to miss the opportunity to shoot at something. So there's wildlife out there, and you need your phone with you in case you fall off in the ditch or something and can't get out.
Or you need your phone with you to take a picture of a cougar track.
Yeah, that too.
Like our oldest son, Taylor, did when he was about, I don't know how old he was, 18, 17, somewhere in there. He went walking in our woods, and he got into a big ditch, and he was walking along the ditch and saw a big track that he wasn't used to. It had just
recently rained like the day before, so everything had been washed clean. So this track was very fresh.
And he took a picture. He had a phone back then. It was a flip phone and with a camera in it. That was pretty cool at that time. He's in his 30s now, but
so
that was
you can
really
calculate how
cool.
old our son is.
Yeah. And he put his hand next to that track. He was wondering about what is that? What made that paw print? And he put his hand next to it, and he brought home the picture, and it was like, whoa, that is big, and discovered that was a cougar. Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that what it was? And then many years later, he was kind of nervous, and he was looking up at the top of the ditch because the ditch was probably about 10 feet deep, something like that. And he was a little nervous. He was looking up at the top thinking, oh my goodness, is this thing tracking me? Is it going to pounce on me? So he couldn't wait to get home. And then several years later, our youngest son, when he was about, I don't know, 13, 12,
13.
maybe something like that. He was walking with our dogs, or one of our dogs, in the woods, and he didn't get too far, and he came face to face with a cougar. Yep. And a wildlife preserve is not too far from us with a lot of water, and which was reason the cougars. We're not necessarily overly native to these kind of things, but they are out there. And he just took off, I guess, backed up kind of slowly, and
the dog took off into chasing the cougar off into the trees. Mm-hmm. And our son started running back towards the house, and he's coming to find us. And he got about halfway there, and the dog passed him because the cougar turned around and started chasing the dog. So there's a lot of wildlife out where we live. I did say earlier that we live in the middle of nowhere on purpose, and it's got some middle of nowhere properties to it.
But as far as what this question is, as far as that was just kind of fun. Wasn't fun. It was really kind of scary, but we look back on it and kind of go, oh, wow. We know things like that can happen out here, but the average person who lives in a homestead can live just 5 miles from the city, buy 3 or 4 acres, and build a homestead on it. Once again, a homestead is a mindset. It is not necessarily happen to have the outdoor life that some homesteaders have. It is a mindset, bringing things back to the home, whatever that may be, wherever you maybe live. So, but once again, if you want all that, that can be found in short distances from the city. Ours happens to be longer. And once again, I don't know if I said this earlier, there is times that it can be difficult because you want to be have quick access to friends, family, events, going to things, and not make it having to be such a big deal. But when our kids were younger, we were involved. They were homeschooled, but however, they were involved in like softball groups, swim teams, church events, things like that, youth groups, all that. They were very much involved. So it really wasn't like to them that we felt that we were so far out. In one sense it was, but in another sense it wasn't.
Well, when we first moved out here, I literally was putting 50,000 miles a year on my truck going into work. So it's...
Yeah, but you also drive all over the city too.
Well, yeah, but...
So if you subtract that, what were you putting in your truck in distance?
To the edge of town would be 50 miles. So it was 100 miles a day just to get in and out.
Okay, so 100 miles a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it was kind of a big deal. But at the same time, we made it as convenient as possible. That was our choice. So for us, to answer that question personally, we did have some challenges. And we learned to compensate for those challenges. We learned not to forget things at the store. We learned to take a day and going into the town, going into the city and just making a half a day of it or a full day of it, whatever it may be, and just get it all done. So that way we didn't have to go back into town again the next day or the next. We could be home for a couple of days. And that is what I liked a whole lot. And I think the kids liked that a lot too. But after a couple of days, they were ready to get back out and see some people.
Mm-hmm. Well, Chrissy, what are some of the updates we have on the property today?
Well, this week, we like to give a little updates of whatever happens on Easy Farms each week. We don't have a lot of new updates, but those that haven't been following with us are Great Pyrenees. Emma had puppies several weeks. They're about 6.5, almost 7 weeks old. And she has 7 good, healthy puppies going on, 2 girls, 2 females, 2 males. And we've got, they're about ready to be up for sale. We've already got a couple of people who have shown great interest in wanting them, or a few of them actually. They'll be ready to go home next week. And they are growing strong. They are just as cute as they can be. I've got a couple videos on our Instagram. And if you are not following us on our Instagram, go ahead and take a moment and do that at Easy Farms Homestead on Instagram, Easy Farms Homestead. And you'll see a couple of videos. They are absolutely precious. We took them outside of the barn. They were in a barn stall where the mama had access inside and outside the barn stall, but the puppies couldn't get outside the stall. And then we took them out about a week ago, and we have another shelter outside not too far from there. That's a nice closed shelter, but a little more outdoors for them. They get a chance to see. The sheep came up to them and just kind of sniffed through the gate at them, and it was a cute little video I got of the sheep kind of going, "What are you?" And the puppies are like, I like you, but they couldn't get to each other. So that's really adorable. It's going to be sad to get rid of them, but it's going to be also a blessing too, because they are kind of a little full-time job there.
Yeah. And they survived the weather we've had lately. Since Wednesday, we have had wind and thunderstorms. They call them freight train storms, where just the same pattern keeps running across the top of the same area instead of moving across and out. And I don't even know how many inches of rain we got, but there were a lot of tornadoes in the area. This storm system covered most of Arkansas, a lot of Mississippi, and like all of West Tennessee, and on up into Kentucky. Yeah, and
Kentucky.
Of course, the same thing went way up north too, but it wasn't as bad thunderstorms up there so much. Actually, they had a lot of windstorms. A friend of ours in Missouri.
No. They live up in Michigan. That was just rain.
Yeah.
But this storm was all the tornadoes and continuous rain from Wednesday through about Sunday morning. It was just one storm after another, with full of everything from dangerous flash flood to tornadoes.
They're actually telling people, don't leave your house unless you're fleeing from your house. In other words, don't be out there driving around, because we don't need you to be part of the problem.
Right.
I think that's pretty much what they were telling them. But that brings us to today's topic, and that is inclement weather on the homestead. And of course, in that, you're not only thinking just about your family and your house, the building you're living in, but you're also thinking about things like your animals, your goats, your sheep, chickens, your farm dogs, your outside dogs, and of course, any pets that might be outside, and maybe, dogs, cats, that sort of thing. But some of the conditions we're going to be talking about is some of the things that we've been through in the 18 years that we've been out here now. Like freezing cold, way below freezing cold temperatures. Last year it got down to -6 out here. And that was pretty uncomfortable.
Yeah, we're in West Tennessee. So
Southwest Tennessee.
Yes, so to get cold, -6 is not normal. We had below negatives 2 years ago, like this, and then we had negatives again this past winter, and this is not so much like us. I mean, to get us down into single digits a few times through the winter is that's kind of common, or to get us into just teens is common, more common in the teens than it is into like 9 and all that, but. We've had, a few of those this year and last year and the year before. So it's kind of like a little weather pattern starting to change for us.
We're in one of those cycles.
And when that happened a couple of years ago, we had to kind of act quickly because, you don't know the weather too far out in advance to do a major project. And in our homestead, we started realizing, darn, I know animals can handle, heavy, colds. Goat, sheep, they can handle all kinds of stuff. Cows, they can handle all kinds of stuff. But, we were a little more wanting to, put up a better shelter from wind and rain, giving them the ability to get in and out of wind and rain. So with this topic, inclement weather on the homestead, what to do is, in that case, we turned around and we had some dog kennels out there, and we had a little bit of a roof over basically one dog kennel.
You're talking about the chain link dog kennels.
Yes, a chain link dog kennel, like the 10 by 10 dog kennels. Yeah. And we put them back. We had them back to back. This is something we already had to be able to separate our dogs when we need to separate them and kennel them up when we want to kennel them up. It's just something that gives the ability. So when I saw this coming in, I got online and we started thinking, because we don't always have everybody doesn't always have the structure for what they need for their animals in really cold weather. Or really windy weather, or hailing weather, or stormy weather. And I would say also, your animals can handle that. They can handle a lot of that. However, we wanted to give them something to be able to get into. Mm-hmm. So what I got online for is I looked for one of those really giant, thick, heavy-duty tarps. And that's what we did. We turned around and got cattle panels. And Les made the roof over those dog kennels. He bent them in half like a triangle, and he zip tied them to the the dog kennel chain link. The panel, what do you call it? Dog kennel panels, and the cattle. I know the cattle panels to that, and then he made a roof over it all, and then we stretched.
This tarp was massive.
It was like 40 by.
It came all the way to the ground on one. Did it go on both sides?
Both sides,
all the way over the top of that. So 6 feet up one side, probably 6 feet across half of it, 6 feet back down the other, and then 6 feet to the ground. I think we had some left over down there too. Yeah, that we had to roll up.
And and so our boys came out and helped us, and we pulled that thing. They got it all the way across. It was really three 10 by 10 dog kennels, and made a really nice, affordable shelter for all of our animals. Not all of them. I mean, the chickens were in another place, but for our Nigerian dwarf goats, because we knew it was also going to bring a lot of snow and a lot of wind, and it really helped. And that was something very affordable. And not everybody has a really nice barn, and not everybody has a really nice lean-to structure. And so just an idea of giving you some affordable ways. This was down in our field, and our barn is not necessarily set up to bring the goats in. It's nothing like that. And so we needed something down in our field, and our Great Pyrenees, they could get in it if they wanted. Let me tell you about Great Pyrenees. They did not need to get in it, but it gave them an option, because when they're out in the fields with the chickens, they don't have we have a rotational tractor, and they don't have a structure out there to get under. They love the outdoor weather. They can crawl up under the chicken tractor. Not always the best place, because it's got an open, like a grid bottom where the poo all falls through. So it's not the best place, but So we wanted to give them an option so they can come into an area where the goats were. And let me tell you, through that whole several days of that, the goats never, I think, walked out of that structure we put together for them.
No,
they loved
stayed
it
in pretty much the whole time.
Yeah.
So, the low temperatures, people sometimes are like going, "Oh, you got to have heat lamps on your chickens." And Christy was looking online one time and she was like, "Well, hang on, these people are in Montana. It's cold there a lot and a lot colder than what we usually get here." And these people were talking about, no, we don't have heat lamps on. It wasn't something that they could do because I think their chickens were pretty far from the house. And the main thing they were saying was if you can keep them out of the draft, then it's a whole lot better for them,
Well, that is true. We know that part, that you got to keep them out of wind and rain.
Yeah.
Every animal needs to be out of wind and rain, but with a chicken, just a little bit of information for those that raise chickens. Chickens can really tolerate very low temperatures. They can tolerate the negatives. I know people get concerned about the comb, especially on a rooster, and yes, that can get frostbite. A lot of times they tuck their comb down in at night into their feathers and their head down to keep it warm. But chickens they bunch up together very tight. Excuse me. They bunch up together very tight in the coop, and they produce a lot of heat at night. Their body temperature goes up at night, and they produce a lot of heat, and their feathers hold in a whole lot of heat. The problem that people don't realize with chickens about trying to over insulate them is they will actually build moisture.
Yeah, it can be unhealthy.
And that can breed getting them sick. That can breed bacteria in their coop, especially along with the pneumonia. I mean, ammonia from the urine and the poo and different things that can really be a breeding ground for more germs for them and get them sick, especially in these cold temperatures with a lot of moisture being built up. So chickens, even in cold temperatures, need to be able to have ventilation. So if you want to wrap your walls or wrap your chicken run in plastic just to keep the wind off of them, that is great. Make sure, though, that they have ventilation, that air needs to ventilate out. So there needs to be an open space at the top so it can ventilate out. The predominant thing you need to do with chickens is make sure they have water that's not frozen. So you have to trade that out.
Yeah.
And food, and keep them out of the wind and the rain. Have them have that
basically
ability.
What you're doing is survival for your animals. Just like if you were lost in the woods, the first things you'd need is water, shelter, food, heat, and security.
Yep.
And sometimes those can be hard to provide, like Christy was saying, like the water. You put a chicken waterer down there, it's going to freeze before the end of the day. And so you're going to have to rotate those out and hope they don't freeze bad enough to crack. Feed can be a problem for them as well, because when it snows, the chickens don't like to walk out in that. We have gone down there before, and all the chickens are in the coop, and there's like a ramp on the back of it, and there's a bunch of them hanging out there. And it's like you can see one that's gotten off and walked over about 15 or 20 feet, and she's just sitting there like, help. I'm out here. Somebody come get me.
I've had to rescue them before.
They look pitiful.
It's like they come out of the coop in the morning and they get so excited they just want to take off and fly, and they land in the snow, and then they go, uh-oh. And then they don't want to, they just want to move.
Yeah.
I mean, they can handle the cold. It's not that. I think it's just kind of scares them a little bit.
Yeah, they don't like it.
But one of the things I do to help them, because we have a chicken tractor, and if you do have a chicken tractor, this can help. I take straw and I go and put it down around, like maybe scatter it around on top of the snow, so they can, and you wouldn't believe how fast they'll get out on that straw and get away from the coop a little bit. They don't necessarily want to hang out inside the coop no matter how cold it is out there. They just need an ability to get back in a place that gets the wind off of them, gets the rain off of them, gets their food and their water.
So along with sub-zero temperatures and snow, like we said, we've been dealing with rain here this past week, and the property, the lower parts of it have been ankle deep in water. So, you got to consider how you're going to get food to them, wait it out.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, you got to swim it out there to them to get it to the feeders.
And then our sheep, like with this, our ground is going into the pastures is a little low, and it holds too much water. And this kind of water is definitely water. No matter where you live, it just cannot. The ground can't take any more saturation of water.
Can't run off fast enough.
What we did, so we had to bring the sheep closer to the higher parts so they can get out of it. And there was a little like a lean-to shelter, and they can handle being out there. This is not. We're not sitting here in 0 degrees and these storms coming through. We still are in normal temperature, normal spring temperatures, and the sheep though still hover up underneath that lean-to. They're not dummies. They want to get out from underneath all that when they can, for sure. What else was it? Oh yeah, that last year I'll tell you one thing that concerned us, and we had to deal with this too. And this is a last minute. So these are things, we're telling you things that we had to do at the last minute for weather coming in. So hopefully this will help you think about pre-think some things out. We had a shelter out in one of our fields. Basically, we took dog kennels again because we didn't want to make a permanent shelter out there. We wanted to be able to move this shelter if we didn't like this. So we did the same setup where we did the dog kennels and we made a roof on it, and we put the tarp on top of the roof and all that, and gave the goats a place to get in and out of if they wanted to. And if we thought we liked it, then we would build some type of maybe like a pole barn type, structure out there. But it rained. This is a different rain. This is a spring rain that never ended. From like March to somewhere in May, we had so much rain. It was, I was just over it. I was over that rain. I was so done with it. And our little dwarf goats, Nigerian dwarfs, were going to have babies. And I got so concerned because the puddles were huge. I'm talking inside the shelter, and that's where the goats wanted to be because they kind of trampled it down even more. And I was so concerned that they would, these were first-time mothers, that they would drop a baby and maybe, take its time, not know exactly what to do, trying to figure out some things, and that baby be in its sack, but down in a puddle, submerged, like its face down there, and die, or the mom take too much time and the baby takes some time trying to get up and in that puddle. I was so, and I'm sure they could have handled it probably better than I was imagining. But I told Les, I said, we have got to do something. So what do you do on a homestead that you got to do really when you only got like a day or two to get something done?
With the materials you already have.
Yeah, exactly. And guess what we had? We had some pallets that we had gotten. And he got some wood on top of it, like plywood, and some boards, and put on top of the pallets. And then we got their little house structure, like a dog kennel. We put that on top of it, and we gave them space to be able to get in out of that and be on top of those pallets of wood. And all we could do at that point was pray she didn't have the baby still in water, as she had it at least sitting on top of the pallet. And it just worried every day. I was like, oh my goodness.
But that all turned out good.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm having a moment here. I'm thinking back of that worry. Thanks for rescuing that moment. Yes, she did. She did great. She had the baby. And it was puddles of water, but she had it right where we were hoping she would have it. The baby was fine. The other mother happened to have her baby at a time when it was a little dry. It had dried out. It was like a week between rains. And it happened. And then, boy, here we go again, weeks and weeks and weeks of rain. So, and that's when the other mother had it. But she did a good job. But once again, these are things we're trying to tell you how to do. Just pre-think something out in your area if your land is low. Or I watched videos from this past week in other areas that rain, where people's chicken houses and their chicken runs, which was dust and dirt, because, that's how it gets, and maybe have some wood chips in it and things like that, just was flooded. And, the poor little chickens, all they had was their roost and they had the ground, but they're they're survivalist little birds. They can handle a lot. God has made most animals very resilient. However, he's also called us to steward the animals and steward them rightly. And so those are the things that we had to do, is to think, what are we going to do in that moment? What are we going to do? Oh, there's a lot of water. Now there's negative temperatures. Now there's hail coming. Do we have the right setup? Is the setup working? We had a friend up in Michigan and all that had, they didn't have the storms, but they had a lot of straight line winds. And her chicken coop, which is a solid wood chicken coop, but it's small, it's not a big house, and she had an attached run to it, and it was fine. That wind picked that whole chicken coop up and the run up and just turned it upside down.
Flipped it all the way upside down.
Oh, it was terrible. So her chickens got scattered. She had to go find and rescue all of her chickens. Fortunately, she got them all back. Fortunately, wonderful neighbors helped her put that back together. That was something that she didn't prepare for. Her and her husband didn't think that was going to happen. Mm-hmm. But now that they know that can happen, now they're going to, do some reinforcements with that.
So, with the rain and the wind, a lot of times come tornadoes. And there were lots of those throughout this storm we just had. And there's not really a whole lot you can do except go, hide underground somewhere. And then after it's gone, come out and pick up the pieces. And so there's really not a lot you can do with tornadoes. They go where they want to. And it's a big mess. We've got some of the videos from parts of the area.
Half a mile tornado.
Yeah, half a mile wide at the base. And it just literally ripped the houses apart. And we were looking, just blew everything into the trees. And we were looking at these videos going, what do you do? What does it take to clean that up other than a bulldozer to come through? Mm-hmm. But just to even begin to get your property back together after that, we haven't had that experience. We've come really close.
Yes,
a while back. We had one that came down our road, and it looked like it must have had a steering wheel, because it literally, every time the road turned, the tornado turned at about the same spot for about 3 miles, and it literally went maybe 1,000 feet north of us, and went all the way up to Jackson, Tennessee, and hit Union University up there. That was a bad storm.
Yeah, it was coming. It splintered when we got out and looked at it. It splintered the trees, like the tree, big giant.
Twisted them.
Twisted those trees off. They were in like points. I've never seen anything like it. It got right up to our front yard and took a turn the opposite direction. But I will tell you this, for all of those people that hold to your faith and that are believers, then you'll understand this, is the fact that we do trust in an almighty God, an all-powerful God, who is the creator of all, even the tornadoes. And he's God, he's sovereign. So we trust that. But the kids and I went around to a friend's house. This was during the day. Les wasn't working, and we went around the friend's house and we went into their tornado shelter, and we sit in there and we sang hymns and we prayed and we sang songs and we sang some contemporary worship songs, and we would pray. And we came out, and let me tell you, that tornado literally right in front of our driveway took a turn the opposite direction of our house. It could have turned straight into our house and then demolished it and head straight across the pasture to our friend's house where we were, and all the neighbors. And we just trust in that did our prayers make that difference? We don't know what God was choosing anyhow, but we trust that he heard our prayers. We trust that he did protect us in that. I'm not saying anything against where
it did hit.
Where it did hit and where tornadoes do hit.
No.
I don't have answers for all of that, but we do believe in praying and petitioning to the God of all creation and the God of all the earth that we petition to. And so we were thankful, that we were okay.
Yeah.
And the people in our neighborhood we had, I will tell you this story too, just to add to that in a faith-based story, is our neighbor down the street lived in a trailer. And we decided we would get out and we would drive around and see the damage. And a big old tree the big old tree fell on his house, on his trailer. And it crushed his house. And I think it's why him
It
and
crushed one end of it.
one end of it. This is a single wide trailer, so it crushed one end. And it was, and his wife had just gotten out a Bible to look for a passport that happened to be, I think, a birth certificate. That was stuck in the Bible, and they were not. I don't even know if they were Christians or anything like that. But she happened to be looking in the Bible and just kind of thinking, I ought to start going to church or something like that.
Start going back to church.
And so she laid the Bible on the bed and it was opened up. She got the birth certificate out and she laid the Bible on the bed, opened up, and her husband opened the back door and saw what was going on. The tornado was right there. Mm-hmm. And he got her and ran into that bedroom, and they stood in the doorway of that bedroom. And a single wide, let me tell you, there's just really nowhere to stand. They
tell you to get out of them.
Yeah, you really should. But
you're better off
had
in the ditch,
no chance. It was right there. And they started praying, and that tree, there was a big old tree, and it fell on the house, and it fell on the other half of the house, which really crushed half that house in. Mm-hmm. But the wind was going crazy, they said. Even with that tree on the house, wind was blowing through, wind was blowing out the windows and everything. It was so bad. And when it ended and it went past them and they maintained their composure and realized they are still alive, she looked up and that Bible was laying on that bed and not one page was turned, but everything else was blown all over the place. Mm-hmm. And she just started to thank God, and they started to thank God, and they just said, I just believe this is a time for me to get my life right back together with God. Yeah. And I just want to throw that in there. Wherever your beliefs are, we welcome everybody here, and we love everyone. But this is just where we are and where we stand on this.
That brings us to the last weather condition to talk about today, and that's the heat of the summertime. It gets hot. Yeah. Everybody talks about, we have a friend that's from Miami, and he came up here and he's like, oh my gosh, it's so hot here. It's a different hot, I guess, but he's like, I can't believe how hot it is up here. And there's not really a whole lot as far as your animals that you can do other than provide maybe some shade for them.
Shade and water.
And make sure their water stays full. Mm-hmm. They will self-regulate, and you may lose some animals because of it. Mm-hmm. Animals like the Nigerian dwarfs, they're from Nigeria originally. So they're acclimated to the heat. They came from a place that's even hotter than here. But water and shade, because you can't air condition the chicken coop. I guess you could, but that would be ridiculous. It would be a little extreme, wouldn't it?
No, it would be.
So, yeah. And not only the animals, because you got to consider yourself. When we moved out here and started doing all these things, it's like, wow, we need like insulated suits to wear in the wintertime when it's freezing cold and snowing. You got to have boots to put on, like mud boots to put on.
Because it gets muddy.
Oh, boy, does it. Yeah. Rain gear. That's what we were experiencing just the past few days is, I got a raincoat. Well, it comes down to my waist, but my pants were soaking wet and my boots were full of water. So, you've got to kind of rethink all that kind of stuff. It's not like, living in town and, oh gosh, we just run in the house from the carport or the garage into the house. If you're out here and you got to go take care of the animals, it doesn't matter what the weather is. Chickens are going to be laying eggs, and the other animals have to be taken care of as well. And it's just, you have to be able to adapt your clothing to the weather in order to go out and take care of these things. Especially if you're doing it larger scale. I mean, if you got 12 chickens, you might be able to leave the eggs out there overnight if it's not freezing cold and just get them in the morning. If it's raining at night, I don't want to go out there and get them. Well, when you've got 100 chickens or more, it's a different deal. It's, you got to go maintain the farm or the homestead.
Well, and then you may have to go around and check on everything, and be ready for storms, checking on fence lines and see what trees have fallen down, see if all the animals are okay, no matter what the temperatures are. We still got to do that, no matter if we get home at 10 o'clock at night and it's dark and it's raining. You have not check the fence lines, but check animals.
Walk the fence line.
No, but we got to check animals. We got to take care of things, and that can get kind of a little tiresome.
Yeah.
Ready to go to bed, but that's the stewardship of the farm, stewardship of the animals that we have to do.
Okay, so that's going to wrap it up for today's podcast. The verse for the day is Proverbs 3, verses 5 through 7. It says, "Trust in Adonai with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. Do not be wise in your own eyes. Fear Adonai and turn away from evil." So y'all have a blessed week.
Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, and we'll see y'all on our next podcast from Easy Farms Podcast.